When a frog sends blood from its sinus venosus to the brain and back, it could travel this route. From the sinus venosus, this deoxygenated blood could then travel to the right atrium, to the single ventricle, to the conus arteriosus, into the pulmocutaneous artery, and from there into the pulmonary branch of the pulmocutaneous artery, to the pulmonary capillaries where gas exchange occurs and the blood becomes oxygenated, to the left atrium, back to the ventricle where the blood may mix with deoxygenated blood, but thanks to trabeculae or depressions in the ventricle and the spiral valve in the conus arteriosus can stay largely separate from the deoxygenated blood, into the common carotid artery, to the internal carotid artery, to the brain capillaries where gas exchange occurs and oxygen is provided to the brain, and then deoxygenated blood can drain into the internal jugular, to the anterior vena cava, to the sinus venosus. The pulmocutaneous artery has two main branches, one going to the lungs and one going to the skin. Amphibians typically perform a significant amount of respiration through their skin, which is why the blood vessels of their skin are so prominent. So the cutaneous capillaries can also then convert deoxygenated blood into oxygenated blood. However, the cutaneous capillaries then drain into the musculocutaneous vein. And although now this blood is more oxygenated, it does not empty into the left atrium as would the oxygenated blood of the pulmonary vein, but rather into the anterior vena cava and the sinus venosus. And so thus the sinus venosus is not only receiving deoxygenated blood from much of the body, but also oxygenated blood from the musculocutaneous vein from the gas exchange which occurred in the skin. When the ancestral pharyngeal arches are reorganized, the carotid artery to the brain is derived from the third arch, the carotid arch. Note that where the external and internal carotids join to form the common carotid, there is a swollen region known as the carotid body, where there are chemoreceptors whose perception of acid, carbon dioxide, and oxygen in the blood will then be the basis for reflexes involving blood flow and blood pressure. While humans do not have a round carotid bulb where the internal and external carotids fuse to make the common carotid, nevertheless, there are chemoreceptors located here which are measuring levels of acid, carbon dioxide, and oxygen in the blood, and these are involved in reflexes which govern the rate of respiration.